This book was so good. I need two of these. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Chris and today's video serves as the Kings of Radiance or a Kings of Radiance review by debut author Luke Shultz. I hope you're ready for a rave review because strap in, this book was very good. I did not consume this book consumed me. From page one, I could not put this down, and when I had to put it down, I was annoyed that work existed and I couldn't just read all day. To say this was a debut self-published book is absolutely astounding. I am calling this now. Sorry to all authors ever. This is my underdog pick of the year. I think. I mean, it's May, so we'll see. But it was very good. From the get-go, we are dropped into Shultz's world. It's all systems go. It is dark, it's dire, the stakes are high, the motivations are set, and the magic is explained within 50 pages. We are essentially following three siblings. We're given a little bit of their backstory as to why they've been separated at the very beginning of the book, and then we're following them as adults as they're all on different paths. We have a younger brother, older brother, and also an older sister with different ideas of what they want. One wants to be free, one just wants to find the others, and one is worrying about someday wearing the crown. Each character is driven by their own clear motivations, yet this story seamlessly connects throughout the entire book. Because this book is so good and so fast-paced, I don't want to say too much about the characters as individuals or the plot line just because of spoilers. I highly recommend picking this book up and reading it for yourself. You don't want to know too much going in, just pick it up and be delighted. In amongst the various quests of our siblings, we have one of the most terrifying magic systems that I've ever come across. It is so simple, yet so effective, and the author shows us just what harnessing so much power can do to a person. It's quite well explained throughout the book. So not only do we see what happens if one person harnesses too much power, but what that then looks like for a group and then a whole nation. There is one scene in particular in this book that had me going, oh shite. And it was so well written that my heart was in my throat the entire scene. So the magic system is based off the sun, or I believe it's called shine. So people can harness the sun and then use that power to do a multitude of things. Sometimes this power can't be controlled and the effects are absolutely devastating. Sometimes people can use a lot of this power and the effects are absolutely devastating. And we get to see those consequences throughout the book in different settings, and it impressed me so much at how well this was built up through what I think is the author's greatest strength of showing and not telling the reader of how this works, and I will get to that point. Each character has their own life and their own way of living. They've been separated very young and they've grown up in different ways. Each character then has their own set of side characters, but each set of side characters matter to the story. And being, a 400 to 500 page fantasy book, having three main characters, each with 3 or 4 side characters that all matter, and as a reader, we can see that these side characters matter to the character that we're following or the POV that we're following, but then all come together and all still play a part without being dropped by the wayside is just excellent. It was done so well, and then they build up a bigger story. So Mr. Shultz, if you could have book 2 out, immediately, that would be fantastic. But not only do our side characters play important roles and they're not just there for the sake of being there, we have an animal companion named Spike, who is a very large lizard that acts like a dog but may actually be a dragon. I don't know, called a pricket, and I want one in my life. I can just imagine Spiky Boy playing with my dog and being a cheeky little lizard pumpo. I don't know, I want one. So that's the story without going into too much detail. These siblings are all sort of trying to get back to each other. Each story has different motivations, like I said before. Within the whole book, there is a bigger plot line, which I can't say too much about without going into spoils, but if you like grimdark, if you like political fantasy, if you are a character-driven reader, I believe this book has something for everyone, which is why it's getting such high praise just within the ARC distribution, because it is so good. And I really hope to see this one go into the SPFBO round 8, because I think it has got a fighting chance from a homegrown author, which would be pretty dang cool. Jumping into my thoughts, the biggest standout for me in A King's Radiance was definitely the author's ability to show the reader and not tell them things. I don't think there was one part of this book where I felt like there was an info dump. In my reading experience, it was definitely, oh, here's a thing, it's being shown how it works. And then that thing gets context a couple of pages later where it is used in a much bigger or a grander situation. You go, oh, okay, that's why we were shown that, is because it paid off here. Rather than being info dump, seeing how it works, it was a gradual, I guess, crescendo into whatever it was being used later on in the story. I feel like a lot of times in new fantasy, particularly debut authors, there'll be quite a few info dumps at the beginning of the book just to sort of word vomit the information out for the reader to make sure that they're really understanding what's going on, and I did not feel that way at all in A King's Radiance. Everything was shown in subtle, enjoyable, and sometimes humorous ways that didn't feel like it was just there to further the story. It had a purpose, and it also helped to immerse me as a reader in the world. I didn't feel like I had to whip out a notepad and start jotting down things that I needed to remember. It was all there for me. It was, here's how something works, this is its significance, and I just thought it was really cool to, particularly as a visual reader, to witness how the world worked rather than being told how the world worked. Another thing in this book which was great was foreshadowing. So it was done very well, it was memorable, so I can still remember the parts of the book where the foreshadowing was placed, even if I didn't guess what event was going to happen later on in the book. But they were very clear, moments as I consumed the story. Another thing I want to shout out in this book is the humour. Now, this book is grim. It is definitely a book that I would consider to be grimdark. It is not a funny book at all, so don't go in thinking that it is, but the author has this really artful way of using humour to dispel tension just for a second, just to give the reader a breather before something more horrific happens. If there's a gritty scene, it might just be to just a little haha moment before we get back into it. And I think it was so well done that it didn't take away from the darkness of the scene that we were in. A lot of time I find in grimdark, if you've got an author that tries to put humour into the book, it can sometimes take away from the serious of the scene, and I did not feel that way here. Another author that does it quite well is Joe Abercrombie. Even though his books are grimdark, the humour is so well placed that it just sort of gives you an moment before we jump back into something completely horrific. Something else that really immersed the reader and was done very cleverly in this book. Now, I don't have a physical copy yet to show you, but on the top of each of the chapter headers was a picture which depicted the POV that we were in. So we had 3 POVs. The one I'm going to use here is the sister character who was basically imprisoned. So on the top of her chapters there was a little cage and it had a lock on it, and that indicated where we were in the part of the story. Now, that cage changed throughout the different chapters, and it was up to the reader to notice what happened to that cage. There was also the younger brother who was sort of coming in and learning the powers that he has available to him. So his little chapter header would change very subtly as well, which is just another very interesting, very clever way to immerse your reader into the tale. The final note that I want to make here are some of the bigger conversations that were happening between the lines were very, very well done. This book isn't dark and gritty for the sake of it. It is trying to have a bigger conversation, to invite the readers to think about different things, maybe in their own life, or maybe just, you know, about what's happening in the world at the moment. A couple of the standouts for me was, why does one person get to dictate what happens to a nation when, on the other hand, it's okay to sacrifice that one person for the sake of many? What makes it right? Who has to make that choice? And how do they come to those conclusions? This is a solid theme throughout the book, being explored with that political sort of overtone, which was very, very interesting to witness. There were conversations about racism, there were conversations about disability and religion. They all take place very subtly within the 500 pages of this book. Because of these conversations, it becomes much more than an enjoyable story. It becomes one of those books that stick with you and make you think long after that last page has been closed. I've had a few conversations with the author now. Very cool guy, very, very approachable on Instagram. I will drop his information below, and also the link to get his book if you are interested. I highly, highly recommend this one. I don't think if you're a fan of grimdark, if you're a fan of character-driven books, if you're a fan of sort of fast-paced fantasy, I don't think you'll be disappointed in picking this one up. I absolutely loved it. This is the closest to a 5-star that I have given a book that wasn't Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. I think I gave this one a 4.5. My only nitpick with the book as it stands is some of the conversations some of the conversations between the characters sort of happen very quickly. Like person A would be like, I'm going to do this thing. Person B would say, I don't think that's a great idea. And then person A would be like, yeah, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then person B would be like, all right. And then they just move on. So that was probably my biggest nitpick. Some of those could have been a little bit more drawn out for me. But other than that, very, very enjoyable, and highly recommend by my two buddies up the top. If you like this video, give it one of these. If you want to see more of this content, then click subscribe at your will, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.